Hello, welcome back to IrishRacing.com's Jump To It show, where we are primed to give you some weekend betting advice. Now, of course, the weather has played havoc with the horse racing schedule. No jumps racing in the UK on Saturday, but there will be action from Ireland. Also, interestingly, looking at Monday, Punchestown hosts the John Durkan Memorial Chase. We will get to that later on in the show. But first of all, as ever, I want to bring in my guests, Ed Quigley and Stephen Harris of Betting Expert. Ed, I'll start with you. What's been your kind of assessment of how racing has handled all of this awful weather we've been having?
Well, what can you do, really? I suppose, as you say, it's temperatures dipping to -6, -7 out in the Shires. It's it ruins it all as a spectacle, doesn't it? I think naturally, clerks of the courses come under a lot of pressure. On one side of things, they want to give every opportunity to let the racing go ahead. Connections obviously get frustrated when things get called off at the 11th hour, but look, it's just the way it is. To be honest with you, I think people shouldn't get so upset about it. But the facts are, it's looking good in terms of the future and the weather. And Ascot obviously lost one of its premier cards of the year at the weekend, but the long walk hurdle is being rearranged and is going to Kempton on the 26th of December onto the King George card. I mean, that really is going to be some, if you can get to the Sunbury venue on that day, that's going to be absolute wonderful scenes, isn't it? We've now got Paisley Park and Champ having another dust up while you're eating your turkey sandwiches. And also the John Durkan's been rearranged for Monday, which is great because it's obviously got the Cheltenham Gold Cup favourite due to reappear in Galloping des Champs. So, look, I do like the fact there have been a few contingency plans. What did make me laugh, though, and I'm sure Stephen will chuckle, was that there was no word to the public about Ascot being rearranged or the long walk hurdle being rearranged for the 26th of December until Nicky Henderson came on a Zoom call on Sky and kind of let the cat out the bag. I don't know whether they were waiting for an official announcement, but we rely on Nicky Henderson to tell us the racing schedule, put it that way. And finally, whilst we're on Nicky Henderson as well, Shishkin should probably touch upon, of course, who was a bit underwhelming to say the least in the Tingle Creek. Well, he's a little issue with his back. He's gone for some physio, but he steps up to 2.5 miles for the first time to run in the Silvian Arco Conti Chase, which is about a month from now. And they said after that, they'll take a view whether they then go even further up in trip and look at something like the Denman Chase at Newbury, or kind of see how he comes through that. So there's kind of lots going on off the track as well as what we can try and get on it.
That's it. I mean, you touch on there, but this weekend is all about the all-weather action. That's what we're going to kind of have to focus on in terms of the active racing. Stephen, I'll bring you in as well, because I know one of your Cheltenham tips every year is actually to also look away from the festival, potential value elsewhere. So, I mean, this maybe gives us a good opportunity to see kind of your thought process on these all-weather meetings. I know you watch a lot of these races as well during the week. So just take us through your thoughts about the all-weather and where we can find the value in the market.
Well, I mean, first of all, the thing to say, I don't entirely agree with Ed about the weather. It's been a complete shambles. I mean, tracks like Ascot and Haydock, fair enough, they've called their meetings off quickly, no problem at all, 24 hours before, given people plenty of notice. There's nothing you can do about that. But we have had the spectacle in the last week of Foss Lass sort of leaving it to the last minute before calling their meeting off because they couldn't get any hot and cold water onto the track. Well, that's just not really good enough, is it? I mean, you've had trainers like Fergal O'Brien going completely mad about it. It costs them a fortune. They all travel to the track for sort of 7 hours in a horse box, tens of thousands of pounds being wasted. And then last night at Chelmsford, a meeting that knew it was going to be -7 all day in the evening, the chap rolls out onto the course mid-afternoon. Oh, it's a bit crusty on top. Everyone had arrived at the track. Another sort of 100 grand's worth of expenses down the drain, and racing looking absolutely ridiculous, not for the first time. So it's been a very unsatisfactory week. And of course, we have now got a few days off as well over Christmas, fair enough. So just when things had started to heat up again, Joe, of course, we'd had firm ground for sort of, September onwards. And we just had a couple of cracking weekends of racing. And then we've had this freeze, which is very, very frustrating. I appreciate, you can't race when the ground's frozen. That's the end of the matter. But there's been an awful lot of things that have been very badly handled. On another point, we're going to talk about the John Durkan. Irish racing, so much more flexible in able to rearrange meetings quickly and speedily, abandoned a few days ago, rearranged for Monday. They've done the same with another card that's going to take place on Wednesday later in the week. Whereas UK racing, British racing, is so leaden-footed and unable to adapt to sort of changing circumstances. It's amazing to compare them.
I mean, this comes back to, just the structure, or perhaps there's just too much racing in the UK. I think we've mentioned this plenty of times on Jump to It, where else would you put these meetings if there's just too much going on, right?
Well, I mean, the thing is, these big Saturday cards that just get binned, they could be run again. I mean, this is encouraging that the long walk hurdle's been rearranged. It shouldn't be too difficult to tack a couple of races on to the end of a card somewhere else. As Ed said, fascinating that Nicky Henderson knew first. I mean, the only thing we're lucky about, if it had been on Betfair, we'd have known even earlier, because that tends to provide a pretty accurate guide as to what's going on within the Henderson. I mean, Kempton, fair play to them. The ground, it's just down the road. It obviously hasn't rained here, but it's been so cold. Their ground at the minute is good to soft, which was pretty amazing at this time of year. Though we are forecast, I think, pretty much a week of solid rain. So I'd hold fire on those King George. I know Ed has put up Hitman at 33-1. I don't think he'd want really deep ground, would he? Because his stamina wouldn't be guaranteed. Although he goes on soft ground, I'd have thought he probably does want good to soft. Whereas the favourite Brave Man's game, probably the softer the better.
Yeah, so Ed, just touch on that as well, some of your King George thoughts. I think we've already talked about it in previous shows, but just take us through some of your thoughts.
Yeah, indeed. I disagree with Stephen in the sense that I don't think Brave Man's game won it an absolute slog either, to be honest with you. He's a pretty quick course, a 3 miler. Yeah, Hitman handles soft. Whether he would it 3 miles again, bit of a question mark. Envoy Allen. It becomes a little bit of a head scratch, that race, doesn't it? Who it would definitely bring into the equation and could easily go off favourite would be Long Press if they give the green light to him and it's soft ground. I mean they were running in an Amazonian swamp when he won at the festival this season, wasn't he? And he galloped up that hill. Charlie Deutsch with 9 pairs of goggles on, etc. But yeah, it is. You say it's luckily, the cold will go. We don't mind the rain when it comes to racing. The cold snap should disappear in the next 3 or 4 days, and then we, all being well, get a green light for some mega clashes over the Christmas period. Obviously, the King George as the Welsh National, and don't forget in Ireland, I mean, there's just scintillating day after day of action with the obviously the 2 mile Grade 1 hurdle, the 3 mile Flooring Porters back, and the Savills Chase, always a great spectacle as well. So yeah, fingers crossed. I'm just going to say though, Joe, it's great to hear Stephen so full of festive cheer straight off the bat at the top of the show. I'm sure he's sending all the Christmas cards out. You know, he's saying good morning to everybody when he's walking his dog, with tinsel wrapped around his neck. So now great to see Stephen in such it's flying form.
Well, yeah, hopefully we can bring in some cheer from some winners at the this weekend's all-weather action. But before we get to that, let's go and touch on the John Durkan. Let's bring up the card. Here, of course, Galopin Des Champs is going to be the odds-on favourite, most likely. But Ed, just take us through your thoughts on this race, especially if Fakir Dudeleri actually lines up.
Yeah, indeed. At the time of recording, we don't have the decks. This race won last year. Of course, by Allaho, who's on the back burner, and it's fascinating to see here Galopin Des Champs. Now, look, he's the Cheltenham Gold Cup favourite. He's been beaten that once, wasn't he? Over fences when that crazy race against Bob Ollinger, the 2 ran a race essentially at the Cheltenham Festival when he had it won by 20 lengths coming to the last and crashed out. But other than that, I mean, he's looked phenomenal, hasn't he? Won his chase debut by 22 lengths. Then won a Grade 1 at the Dublin Racing Festival by 9 lengths, barely having to come off the bridle. Then had that miss up at Cheltenham, and then, I mean, absolutely pulverised the field at Fairyhouse when last seen, wasn't he, in the Fairyhouse Gold Cup. Again, you could crab the form to some extent, but 18 lengths without barely having to go through the gears. Look, it just looks fantastic. What in the longer term, what does become interesting is the Gold Cup trip. 3.25 miles, you know, in the longer term. He's not a horse to me who's at the moment screamed out like he wants a total punch up over a staying trip. Now, I know from his hurdling days, he did tackle 3 miles once and he absolutely romped home again there. So it could just be the fact that he's such a classy sort. All trips come alike. But interesting, they're starting him off here over the intermediate trip of a 2 miles 4. And then, according to Willie Mullins, they're going to look to step him up in trip in the spring. I think he's got a bit on his hands here, as you say, Joe. If Fakir Duduri does line up, this is a Grade 1 winner in his own right. He's no mug at all. Of course, won the Melling Chase, a really good style. Beating a horse I like, the King George Hitman, beating best part 6 lengths back in April. And if he's revved up first time out 2.5 miles here, he's going to, at least you like to think, give Galloping des Champs something to think about. So, yeah, interesting horses and where they go. Galloping des Champs, we discussed this on the kind of pre-season jump show we did, didn't we, Steve? And that Galloping des Champs looks all class, and it could be his class will see him home over every trip. But just in the back of my mind, he's 3.25 miles in what is only 12.5 weeks' time now, maybe just going to detract what his assets are. I suppose only time will tell.
Yeah, not long now. But Stephen, let's take us through your thoughts on the John Durkan.
Yeah, I mean, it does depend whether Fakir Duduri turns up. He's a very smart horse, a slick jumper, very progressive last season. Perhaps it was one run too many when he finished 5th on his final start. That was over 3 miles. I think this sort of trip, 2 mile 4, is probably more Fakir Duduri's bag. Galloping des Champs just looked an absolute machine, didn't he? I mean, he broke Bob Ollinger's heart. I mean, people have sort of crabbed that form because Bob Ollinger's obviously not looked the same horse since. But it's sort of a bit like Shishkin and Energumen. I think it sort of bottomed Shishkin, and I think it bottomed Bob Ollinger. He was going to get beat a very long way by Galloping des Champs. He didn't look right. Something was amiss. But the form, I mean, the horse who got left 40 lengths second that day at Cheltenham when he fell in the Turners was Bustleton. I mean, he's come out and won a Kerry National. He's a really, really good horse. He was beaten literally 2.5 fences by Galloping des Champs. I mean, it was an incredible performance, and he showed it was no fluke in April when we last saw him in Ireland. He absolutely flew round from the front. He's a bold jumping front runner. I mean, people talk about prices for the Gold Cup and so. If all's well with him for the Gold Cup, there isn't a second in, is there? I mean, you're sort of looking at Protector out and horses like that. A Plus Tard pulled up the other day. They're all, they're all much of a muchness, aren't they? I mean, Galloping Des Champs could be a real top class chaser. He's done it at Cheltenham. He's got loads of potential to keep on improving. What's the story? There've been stories. Why hasn't he run so far, Ed? Is it just the ground, or has he had a setback since April?
Yeah, he had a very, very minor setback in there. I think just as he came back into training, and he was just 3 or 4 weeks behind the others. But Willie Mullins repeated absolutely nothing to worry about. And the evidence suggests the fact we're seeing him on Monday instead of Allaho, it kind of tells you that perhaps it was just a very, very minor issue. And as you say, just great to see these excited horses. Back really, your Gold Cup favourite. We're going to have our Champion Hurdle favourite, Constitution Hill, back in 10 days' time. It's all feels like it's going up a gear at the moment.
Perfect. And Ed, you wanted to mention this next race as well. So the race after the John Durkan, let's take us through it. So you've got Appreciate It in here. Just take us through some of the horses you're looking at and how do you think this race is going to run?
Yeah, we got a 2 mile beginner chase here. We've won last year by Fernie Hollow, of course. Unfortunately, it's just been announced in recent days is out for the season again for the champion chase, wasn't it? But look, there's someone put up on Twitter the other day a bit of a joke about where are all the Willie Mullins horses. I mean, there was a list of about 32 horses rated 150 plus. It was a ridiculous amount of horses. Well, there's a few of them entered in here, and Steve was talking about. It's Galloping des Champs and then any other price the rest, if you like, in the Gold Cup market at the moment. Well, you've kind of got that in the Arkle market. You've got John Bon as your strong market leader, and we've not really seen anything else come out in the 2 mile chasing division that has done anything to get us excited. Well, I'm hoping we see something here, Joe, because we've got last year's Supreme Novice Hurdle winner, Appreciate It, Dysart Dynamo, of course, who was tanking in the Supreme. Behind Constitution Hill and John Bon at the time of his departure too from home this year is entered up. And we've got the likes of Journey with Me in here as well. So I'm hoping there's, you'd like to think Appreciate It or Dysart Dynamo have really got the makeup to, at least kind of thrust themselves into the Arkle picture, if that makes sense. I mean, Dysart Dynamo looked a terrific prospect at one stage last season. I mean, we sent off joint favourites in the Supreme to beat Constitution Hill, believe it or not. That's kind of what the market volumes were saying on the day. And in the case of Appreciate It, You go back to that run, I mean, it was about 22 lengths he won the Supreme by, wasn't it? In an astonishing performance, albeit in a small field. Struggled with injury, came back in the champion hurdle behind Honeysuckle. Now he's making a belated chase debut. So it's definitely a race to keep an eye on, because you'd like to think there's something coming out of this which will be able to at least put a marker down. And I said that the ARC will market the 2 mile chasing division. We've got Jumbon here mopping up all before him. But there's nothing really in Ireland yet come out and really said, wow, here we go. Here's a 2 mile horse. And, the likes of Al Fabiolo we yet to see, Sir Gerhard. There's lots in the Willie Mullins ranks, which we're waiting to see him unleash. But I'm sure Appreciator or Dice at Dynamo will take their chance in this. And you'd like to think one of them can make up into a grade 1 chaser.
Lovely stuff. All right, then, chaps, let's move on to your tips of the weekend. So, Stephen, I tried to get this out of you earlier in the show, but let's do it now. Your all-weather experience. So, where do you kind of spot the value on some of these races? I mean, obviously, we're starting off with Lingfield. So, yeah, take us through your thought process.
Well, I mean, in general, all the all-weather tracks are completely different. For me, Lingfield is a place to avoid short prices like the plague. A lot of the races are very tactical, very fine margins, who kicks at the right time, who gets the best ride, who comes widest, decides a lot of these races. So I'm not looking to play at short prices at all. I think it is something of a punter's graveyard in that regard. Chelmsford, I'm not racing to have a bet in general, full stop. I don't like the surface, and I think they get a lot of results there. Again, I certainly wouldn't play short. Kempton is by far the best of the all-weather tracks. They get good standard horses running in, good maidens and novices from the Newmarket yards. I think the form works out. The races tend to be truly run. You certainly don't want to be drawn wide over those middle distance races at all. It's very hard to win from the car park. You either got to burst out the stalls and get across, or be dropped right in and ride for luck. And it's not an easy place to come from miles behind that, Kempton. There used to be a dead rail at Kempton, but generally speaking, I think it's ridden pretty fair over the last few months. And Wolverhampton, again, not a place I play regularly at, I must admit. They race sort of Saturday nights and stuff. It's not racing that I follow that avidly, but there can be some really good betting opportunities. I just think, generally speaking, I try and avoid really short prices, which hopefully this weekend with these tips we have done.
Well, let's lead straight into then your nap of the weekend. So we're looking at Viola in the 3 o'clock at Lingfield. Just take us through your thought process on this one.
I mean, this couple of the first thought process is the Winter Oaks trial. Well, I very much doubt any of these will be winning any Oaks at Epsom in the summer. But either way, it's still a really good race. There's some promising horses here. And Viola is pretty exposed, but she's got a fairly good strike rate on the all-weather. She's 3 wins from 9 starts. She's much more effective on these sort of surfaces. I thought she ran really well. I think it was back at Goodwood in July. She finished second behind an unexposed one. That's good form. And she ran on the all-weather last time over 1 mile 5, and she was dropped right out and then stayed up the inside, where it's very hard to come off the back at Lingfield up the inside. I thought she ran really well. She just weakened out of things at the furlong pole, a lot better than the bare result. She's back to 1 mile 2 here, so she'll need a much more positive ride from Muscat. But James Fanshawe, a trainer I like, he had been quiet, but they had a very well-backed winner at Lingfield in the week who looked a nice horse, who obviously his name I now can't remember, but looked a very promising horse, only just won on the nod. But the yard could be poised to come back into form. And I think Viola, 10-1, she's got plenty of good all-weather form. I think she'll go really close.
And that's it. I mean, the obvious danger perhaps in the race, I think will lead to as well, leads me nicely onto one of Ed's tips in the race. So see Serena. So Ed, take us through your thoughts on this one.
It would have been Hickory, might have been the horse you're thinking of, Stephen, who won in the week for the Fanshawe team. I don't know. But anyway, see Serena. See the Stars, Philly, who disappointed last time out. No, make no bones about that. That was at Thirst, but it was a really deep ground. I'm happy to forgive that run because previously at this track, I thought she looked quite smart when winning over a mile. She only really got going in the latter stages of that 1 mile contest as well. So on pedigree and on that visual perspective, you would have thought that stepping up to 10 furlongs here would definitely suit. So I'm happy to put a line through the run at Thirst last time out where she bombed out. It was deep ground on turf. It just didn't look happy on it, to put it bluntly. Up to 10 furlongs back at this track. So William Haggis' team, Kieran Fallon on board. I think there's a lot more to come. I think she'll be going over 12 furlongs. I don't think it'd be a surprise at some point soon. So, see Sarina for me would be my selection in 3 o'clock.
Great stuff. All right, let's move on to the next selection on the card. So we've got Forest of Dean for Stephen. So let's just bring up the form book here and take us through your line of thinking on Forest of Dean, Stephen.
Well, yeah, 3:33 is the well-known time for a good horse race on a Saturday. Another moan there. No, this one's a pretty useful form. We won the Winter Derby here in 2021, but has only actually got to the track 4 times since, which is something of a concern. But obviously, he's not the easiest to train. He's a 6-year-old now. But I thought there was a lot to take from his run here back in November. That was after 9 months off the track. He was weak in the market. He got a typical sort of Havlin type ride, dropped out last and sort of nudged out in the straight, finished with running left. I thought it was quite a promising effort, and I think he might improve quite dramatically from it if he's ridden more positively. Now, he's up against his sort of stablemate again, Harrovian, who's going to be about a 3-1 chance. He's a horse who keeps promising more than he ends up delivering. I've been with him a couple of times in the last 6 months, Harrovian, and I think he is a bit of a tricky ride, a bit of a bridle horse. So I think that Forest Dean might improve fitness-wise enough under a more positive ride to beat his stablemate. Now, whether or not that's good enough to beat Algiers, who's liable to be a short price favourite at the Crisfords, looks a very useful and promising performer. I'm not sure, but I thought Forest Dean, I think we're looking at 6-1 there. I think there is a bit of 10-1 out there for Forest Dean, and I think that's a fair price.
Lovely stuff. This is just to clarify your value angle of the day. Yeah. So Ed, we'll go over to your value angle pick as well, please.
Yep, I'll be looking at Capricorn Prince as my value angle here, Joe, in the 225. Now, this is an individual who just threatens to stay a trip, but doesn't stay. That would be just the best way I could put it. You look, last time out over 2 miles, was well beaten on the penultimate start over 2, finished runner-up. It just gives every impression that a trip will suit, yet the facts of the book are 2 miles doesn't. Remarkably, when coming back to this distance, the horse has a phenomenal record. He's 3 from 3 over 1 mile and 4 furlongs. So coming back down in trip, I can only see as a positive. I say unbeaten over course of distance. Off a mark of 58 has eased in the weight, so it's only £3 higher than when last in the winners' enclosure, and has won off this mark in the past. Gary Moore team, well, they've been amongst the winners under all codes at the moment. They've been operating at a 20% strike rate for December, so they're still ticking over nicely. And as I said, I think Capricorn Prince, the salient point here, Joe, is coming back down in distance to 1 mile and 4 furlongs. I just do not think this horse sees out 2. Back to 1.5 miles, unblemished record over the C&D. That's what I like. There is an argument at 5-1. Could be an each way play, where you can play win only, entirely up to you. But yeah, Capricorn Prince, my value angle to land the 225.
And also looking at that race as well while we're bringing it up, any obvious dangers for you in here, or is it just you're focused on Capricorn Prince alone?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a funny old market in the sense that Vision of Hope is kind of second favourite in here, and hasn't really done a great deal so far, beating in some very moderate races for the George Bowie team. But that yard are absolutely flying. And by virtue of the horse being so unexposed and going handicapping off a lowly mark, obviously a lot of people are expecting big improvement off that type of rating. So Vision of Hope is clearly one to take note of. And then I was going to hope you could try and pronounce the favourite here, Joe. But Sequaim I'm going to go with, who is your current 11-4 market leader. The blinkers have gone on and didn't do any good. They took the blinkers off, stepped the horse up massively in trip last time out at this venue. Bosch, a 28-1 upset. Who knows whether this horse can continue the winning trend beyond that, if you see what I'm saying. The horse was a 14-race maiden, stepped up to 1.5 miles last time out, bolted up at 28-1. Got up £3 for it. I just wouldn't be 100% guaranteed that Sequaim could back up that run, given the previous evidence. But we shall see. But I just think Capricorn Prince is the most solid one, and 5-1 gets the nod from me.
Lovely. All right, well, let's get to Stephen and your long shot of the day, so of the weekend. So that's looking at Free Solo. Take us through your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, 2:40 at Chelmsford. Hopefully they remember to put the tractor around all afternoon to make sure the meeting goes ahead. This one has got quite an interesting backstory. He's only managed to win once from 23 starts, which isn't the most appealing profile. But go back a few years, he was running in group races for Jessica Harrington. Was rated mid-90s at peak. Now, somehow, got down to 65 for Jamie Osborne and has started to show a bit more. Now, Jamie Osborne is a well-capable trainer. Obviously, his daughter riding Safi, she's brilliant. But Jamie's really struggled this winter. He's not got the horse he had, and they've basically been out of form. And Free Solo has fallen down the weights quite quickly. And here, over course and distance in November, he finished a cracking third. And the money has started to arrive. Last time at Kempton, there was good money, but never really got warm. It was one of those races. He ended up too far back and finished with running left in the tank. Back to Chelmsford, 7 furlongs. The blinkers are back on. Everything looks in play. I mean, to be honest, if Free Solo can't go close here off 65 in this bargain basement handicap, then he's probably a bit of a lost cause. But I think he will go well. He's around about 7 to 1. I think he's quite an interesting betting proposition.
Lovely stuff. All right, let's move on to Ed's long shot as well here. So just take us through your selection, Ed. We've gone for Silverscape in the 12.05 at Lingfield.
Yeah, indeed. I'm hoping there's enough pace on here that unfortunately there's quite a few hold-up performers in this race, Joe, which could scupper things because my selection here would like to come from off the pace as well. I think a strong gallop would really suit. If someone will tear them along, I mean, I don't know who it would be. Obsidian Knight likes to come from off the pace. So does Berenboim as well, but maybe one of the others will tow them along at a good old gallop. In which case, I think this could play in the hands to Silverscape, who was a strong finisher at Kempton last time out. And previously to that, finished third at the same venue as well. And previously to that, finished runner-up over on 1 mile 3. I think 1 mile 4, a strongly run encounter will really suit. The horse only has 1 win in his career at Lingfield. That came over to 10. But I think 1.5 miles, he's given every indication that they go hard up front. He could kind of swoop from off the pace and pick up the pieces, if you like. They put the cheap pieces on last time out. I see they've been stuck in the bin this time round, so they clearly don't think they made a great deal of difference. But so taking all that into account, horse was only beaten a couple of lengths off a mark of 80. Runs off that again today. I think tactics are going to be key here. I was and ahhing over Silverscape because ideally, I think maybe a slightly bigger field and a stronger, guaranteed stronger gallop would suit. But I do think this horse is poised to win off a mark of 18. As I said, if they can go hard up tops, I wouldn't be shocked to see a bit of a stalking ride from Aidan Keeley at the back and come with a late rattle. So Silverscape, not really a long shot in the sense that he's 25 to 1 or something, but the horse has been on a bit of a long losing spell. Got to go back nearly a year to last time the horse was in the winner's enclosure. But I thought could be the value call here over 1.5 miles at Lingfield.
Fantastic. Okay, so we're just going to round off as well with just a quick summary of the tips. So, Stephen, just take us through your 3, please.
Yeah, the betting expert nap of Saturday is Viola in the 3 o'clock. The value angle selection is Forest of Dean in the 3:33, and then over to Chelmsford for the long shot, 2:40, Free Solo.
Lovely stuff. We'll keep an eye on all of these selections and also add them into your horse tracker on irishracing.com. I know I'll be doing that. And Ed, also just take us through your 3 selections for the weekend, please.
Yeah, happily. That's the nap. Be C Sarina up to 10 furlongs for the first time out back at Lingfield. I think they're 2 major ticks in the right boxes. So that Cedar Stars filly could win for William Haggis' team. Capricorn Prince over 1.5 miles has a sensational record at the track. So I'm prepared to forgive recent 2 mile form. So Capricorn Prince, the value call there. And then Silverscape, as I said, I think 1.5 miles off a mark of 80 at Lingfield is fair cop at 6 to 1 to win a wide open encounter.
Nice one, Ed. All right, thanks a lot for your tips and best of luck to Stephen and Ed. Of course, we'll be back very soon for more previews, hopefully more racing as well, some more jumps racing given the weather. But that wraps it up for today's edition of Jump To It. As always, please do gamble responsibly if you do follow the selections, and we'll be back very soon for more here from irishracing.com.